Now, of course, the big story of the week has been the midterm elections in the United States. We were told there was going to be this Democrat blue wave sweeping the Republicans away, but it didn't happen. They did win power in the House of Representatives, but then again, when you look at the history of midterm elections, the party that is not the party of the sitting president usually gains in the midterm elections, and they didn't gain as much as some have gained. But they gained enough just to cross the line to control the House of Representatives. But not only didn't they gain in the Senate, the Democrats, they lost ground, and the Republicans got more seats than they had before. And of course, what all this is symbolic of, and literally of, is the great divide in American politics, which has been systematically created by people like George Soros, the billionaire financier funding the left, or what is called the left, and people like Sheldon Adelson, who's called himself, what did he call himself? The richest Jew in the world, he called himself, who's been the major funder of Trump and Republicans, etc. And so you've got this great divide. And what we're going to see now is that stepped up a few gears because the control of the House of Representatives gives the Democrat majority power for impeachment of Trump, if they want to go down that road, or investigations into Trump. And the Senate has the power to basically, if the House of Representatives went with impeachment, the Senate has the say in whether he's impeached or not. And basically, what you're looking at is 2 years now, the last 2 years of Trump, in which it will be absolute chaos and civil war, political civil war in America. I mean, we've seen it, of course, ramping up and ramping up and ramping up, because that's what the manipulators in the shadows want. But it's going to be ramped up even more now. And, you can see the priorities and the utter lack of concern for the problems of Americans. Americans sleeping in the streets, Americans on low wages, Americans young Americans who can't afford to get married and can't afford to have children. Because none of these issues is being addressed. And after the result, when it was known that the Democrats had taken the House of Representatives, their spokespeople were coming out and talking about their priorities. And it was impeaching Trump, it was subpoenaing Trump's tax records, it was all this little world civil war. And not a mention of all the problems in America that need addressing for Americans. And Trump's come back and said, look, okay, you can investigate me if you like, but I'm going to launch investigations against you, the Democrats, if you do that. So you can see the civil war ramping up, within hours of these midterm election results. This is a story from today, as I record this, in Amsterdam. Donald Trump threatened the Democrats with Senate probes. I don't know if that word probe. The reason journalists use the word probe, it's not least in headlines, is because investigation is a long word. And investigation doesn't work well in headlines. So they had to find another word. And there ain't a lot of synonyms for investigation that are usable. So they came up with this word probe a long time ago. I mean, will somebody stand there and poke their finger today? What's in here? Anyway, Donald Trump threatened the Democrats with Senate probes into alleged leaks of classified information, while the party that has just taken over the House vows to hold the president accountable. Right. People sleeping in the streets, both of you? There are, really? Trump warned the Democrats against wasting taxpayer money on House investigations into his administration, issuing a thinly veiled threat on Twitter. If the Democrats think they're going to waste taxpayer money investigating us at the House level, then we will likewise be forced to consider investigating them for all the leaks of classified information and much else at the Senate level. Two can play at that game, Trump tweeted. The president stopped short of naming the exact leaks he meant. Another thing that the Democrat spokespeople have said is a priority for them is again ramping up the Russia investigation, which is a total scam. And see what's happening. People say, well, why would they want Trump as president and then have all these attacks on him? Well, what you're doing is you're controlling both sides and thus controlling the game. There are many things, a long list of things, that Trump stands for and Trump is pushing that the people who control him want. But the other side of the people that control him through the Republican Party is the same force controlling the Democratic Party through other personalities. So what you do is you elect Trump because that's what you want. You wouldn't have been elected otherwise when you know how presidential elections work. And you've got all these things that you want Trump to do because he wants to do them. But there's some things that Trump wants to do that you don't want him to do. Like build a wall to check migration from the south. And you don't want him, as he said he would during his election campaign, to get closer to Russia because he didn't see the point in all this division. So as soon as he's elected, that's when, all premeditated, those in the shadows through the Democratic Party and their owned media like CNN and MSNBC, etc., they started pushing this Russia collusion. Now, what did that do? That meant that the pressure on Trump was not to get closer to Russia because people would say, oh, see, look, collusion, see, that's what it is. And then you had the great resistance to building the wall, which means it hasn't happened. Because they don't want that, because they want mass immigration in from the south, because they want to change the face of America, just they want to change the face of Europe using different puppets. And so you've got now the extremes of the Democrats calling for open borders, which means the end of America. If a country doesn't have borders and anyone can come in, no matter what their background, well, it's over. Finished, kaput. There is no country. And that's the idea, as I've been saying since the 1990s. It's to bring an end to countries so that the world does not have effective cultural borders where people can decide their own fate within the borders. They want a world government dictating to everyone, so they don't want things like borders to get in their way and national governments. It's what's happening. It's all connected. And so that's some of the background to the midterm elections. And of course, it's so crazy. Here's a headline. I'm not making it up. You don't know how much I wish I was, but I'm not. Midterm elections. Dead brothel owner Dennis Hoff wins Nevada Assembly seat. Breathe. Repeat. Dead brothel owner Dennis Hoff wins Nevada Assembly seat. No, it's not the Comedy Store. A deceased brothel owner and reality television star has won a state assembly seat in Nevada in the midterm elections. Dennis Hoff, who owns 7 legal brothels in the state, died last month during his 72nd birthday celebrations. His body was found on 16 October at his Love Ranch. It might have Love Branches, I don't know. Love Ranch in Crystal, Nevada. The aspiring politician called himself the Trump of Pahrump, after the town he hoped to represent. He also wrote a book called The Art of the Pimp, playing on the title of Donald Trump's own book, The Art of the Deal. Hoff posthumously defeated Democratic school administrator Lisa Romanoff on Tuesday, according to the Nevada Independent. My man Dennis Hoff crushed his opponent from the great beyond, Chuck Muth, his campaign manager, wrote on Twitter. And I don't know. The world's freaking mad. And it's another story about some of the wonderful people that have been elected, dead or alive, in the midterms. US voters re-elect lawmakers facing criminal indictments and corruption charges because why not? Embarrassing social media photos could easily sink a congressional campaign, the story says. But several lawmakers have shown that you can be charged with corruption and embezzlement to still win re-election. American voters took partisan politics to a whole new level on Tuesday after Republican Congressman Dennis Hunter and Chris Collins, both of whom face federal indictments for crimes including embezzlement and securities fraud, won re-election. As long as the Democrats don't win, right? Another big takeaway tonight, being under federal indictment, this is someone on Twitter, a guy called Ben White, is no bar to winning re-election. Hunter, a 5-term congressman from California, was charged along with his wife in August of misusing campaign funds totaling more than $250,000. The Hunter household found remarkably creative ways to spend the embezzled cash, even funding the purchase of a $600 airline ticket for their pet rabbit. The congressman also used the money to reportedly carry out extramarital affairs and to take vacations in Hawaii, London, and Las Vegas. On top of that, he put the blame on his wife. The 60-count indictment includes allegations of conspiracy, or what? There are no conspiracies. Wire fraud and falsification of records. And this is a classic example of why so many people, not all of them by any means, but so many people deserve the politicians they get. If you are going to vote, not by looking at the character, background, and history of the person you're voting for, but by what party he represents or she represents, then you are going to vote people in who shouldn't be there. Because, well, I didn't know that he was facing criminal indictments and corruption charges. Nobody told me. What do you think he's going to stand up there and tell you? Before you vote, you check the person out. Is he Republican? Oh, I'm voting for him. Is he Democrat? Oh, I'm voting for her. Unbelievable. The stupidity of it. And then they say, oh, God, look, you can't trust politicians. Well, cool. You can't trust yourself if you don't check them out before voting them in. I'll tell you one thing, though. There's going to be a lot of to and fro, like I say, upping the ante of the left-right Trump progressive war. But they are going to have unanimous agreement, virtually unanimous agreement, on certain things. And you can predict that now. One is Israel. Anything Israel wants, they get, because they fund both sides. And also on Iran.